Welcome to the New Commission's Artist Talk series for the new site-specific artworks, sponsored by the Houston Airport System at George Bush Intercontinental Airport and Houston Hobby Airport, on behalf of the City of Houston's Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs. Hosted by Houston Arts Alliance Director of Civic Art and Design, Grace Zuniga. Please welcome RRR, Ryan Takaba, Robert Diaz de Leon, and Ronnie Nichols.
My name is Ryan Takaba.
My name is Ronnie Eccles.
My name is Robert Diaz de Leon.
We worked on Big Texas Sky, located at Gate 30 at Houston Hobby Airport. Big Texas Sky is a site-specific installation, and the way that we went about it was to try to augment the passenger experience while responding to the existing architectural and structural context. So I think it's a very contextual piece and very specific to that location.
It is an array of suspended panels that are printed with images of the sky in Texas.
So the piece itself is composed of an aluminum frame and acrylic graphic panels. And we constructed the panels similar to the way you would kind of a double glazed window unit, where we have two acrylic panels with prints on the interior sides to protect it. And so we essentially designed it to be kind of like a baffle or louver system, given the suspended ceiling nature of the piece. It's one massive image of the Texas sky that's printed in 2x4 acrylic panels and baffled in an array to kind of give you that arc shape or that V shape. We had originally discussed the idea very early on. We really wanted to play with color. The airport itself has very neutral color tones, rightfully so. It's a public commercial, building, so it needs to be able to stand the test of time. And we really wanted to play off the idea that we would have something a little bit more celebratory in that space. And so we started to think about, what was common to each of us, given that while we all three currently live and work in San Antonio and then in Central Texas, we're not all technically from there. And then, of course, obviously the obvious sort of contextual reference to the airport and flying. I just think, well, we all do kind of reside under the same sky. And so we started looking at various images, and some of our original conceptual ideas were to explore different locations. And as the piece consolidated into one single element, I think I was driving back from El Paso, and so it was just on I-10. There was a big, West Texas is just large and empty for the most part. And so it has what I would consider the biggest sky in Texas. I think the biggest technical challenge, and Robert, you probably have a little more to elaborate, was probably developing the structure itself, given that we were suspending the piece from an existing structure at an airport. Nonetheless, there were a lot of code specific requirements, and then obviously to make sure that the piece itself would remain safe. Once we went through with the engineer and figured out the structural loads, we realized we were only able to add the extra load of the piece to one single member of the existing structure. And so the way that it's designed is it basically works like a pendulum, and it's suspended from multiple locations, but all on the same axes. So I think that was probably the most difficult.
That and just weeding through the piles of as-built drawings, the entire airport. There's hundreds and hundreds of drawings that are used to build a building, and fortunately or unfortunately, we were flooded with all of that information, and trying to weed through that to find the appropriate information for the engineers to do their work was a little bit excruciating, but it was necessary evil. That, and of course the complexity of dealing with being in an airport and the security concerns and everything else that go along with it added to the complication, but it wasn't anything that we didn't kind of already expect, I don't think.
It was just going to be adding that sort of thing from an artistic perspective. Anytime you're moving into an existing structure and trying to fit your object or an intervention in that sort was always, I think, a big challenge. conceptually and visually to make the two things work. And the airport structure is particular to the airport, and I think for us, the challenge is to make an engaging piece work with the structure. And so I think we wanted our piece to feel like as if it was supposed to be part of the airport as well.
I think initially one of our first thoughts, and something that kind of drives a couple of the other projects we've worked on together, is this sense of delight. That obviously, from an architectural background, from my end, that's one of the main tenets of architecture, how people interact with an airport and what the traveling experience is. And obviously, in the last couple of years, I think it's been more of a burden and difficulty than maybe it used to be, or maybe anybody would like it to be. And so I think we really saw this as an opportunity for individuals that were either leaving Texas or arriving at Texas to have this sort of diversion, or not a distraction, but really this kind of sense of arrival and this kind of celebratory moment, maybe something that was slightly refreshing after getting off the plane or being ready to board.
I know Alton had mentioned that that piece was supposed to be a beacon, or they could say, hey, go down to this thing, in this case, go down to the sky, or point people in that direction. I think the hope was that you would see it from that vantage point, and then as you made your way through or under it, you would have slightly different variations based on the way the panel is situated, and the great sort of the stepped sort of panel placement. So you would be able to sort of see as you're walking differences in the sky, sort of as if it was changing, but not actually changing.
Because of the long concourse, you get this great vista down the concourse, and that it's kind of a milestone, or it kind of draws you in to a certain extent, and that the closer you get and the more that you explore, the more that you see. And so from the approaching the work from down the concourse, you have one experience, and then coming out of the gates where you've been in the plane the whole time, and you're back on Earth and back to civilization. Then you walk out of this kind of relatively low ceiling gate, and then into this more expansive space where there's a blue sky, and kind of tells you that this is, like Ronnie said, a delightful place to be.
This is the first commission that we received to do a public art project together. I know each of us has our own respective backgrounds, which I think lends itself really well to coming together as a team. The way that we were all introduced actually was through another project in San Antonio. My background as an architect, I was working as the design architect on a large office project, and I was introduced to Robert and started working with him. Fast forward to the end of that project, we were asked to do a site-specific art installation or art object in one of the lobbies. And I reached out to Robert, who then introduced me to Ryan, and we produced what we call the egg de Leer. And then after doing that, Ryan had the idea to maybe, come together as a team and maybe, seek out projects like the one that we were lucky enough to be a part of here at the Houston Hobby Airport. And so this would be our first project as R&R.
My everyday is being a maker, a fabricator. In this case, there was more input in the outcome in our partnership. So yes, I have done other things, other artworks, but basically just executing the work for other people.
Yeah, my studio practice is mainly object-based or installation-based that's within the gallery context. So the viewer's experience is within that smaller private gallery experience. And I've always wanted to work outside in the public space or in the civic space, and how to get engaged that way was, I think, challenging on making that step into that world without having a piece already made. And then I think working with Robert and Ronnie on a commission-based piece that was in a private building, but it was in a public space, was sort of the springboard from my own personal development. And then this project came along, and then we're working on another one.
I think like you mentioned, we've got an architect, blacksmith, ceramicist. I think what's really interesting about that process is the way that we worked. One of the things that was interesting about how we evolved the team dynamic when we moved into the Big Texas Sky project is that we were all starting off at the initial conception. And so I think it was really interesting to be able to have those conversations at the beginning of the project where originally the commission was just, hey, this is what we're after. Can you help us make it? This was, hey, well, what do we as a team want to do? And at the very beginning, and throughout the process, it's very collaborative. We all had design input. We all have the experience of different day jobs, so to speak, and different backgrounds that help really bring a lot of input and insight into the final outcome of the piece. We're intrigued by how people interact with the piece. And so it's a much more extroverted, I guess, process as opposed to designing something kind of alone in the studio and then seeing what that sort of personal expression is. And then, of course, as we go through the process, what we found really compelling about the way that we worked as a team and was really great in terms of marketing ourselves is that most of the contracts or things that have been put in front of us have been kind of under the design, fabricate, install kind of part. And so what's compelling there is that we all have some design background with varying level of strengths and weaknesses. We all have some fabrication experience with varying strengths. We all have installations. And so we very much, operate kind of like a tripod where we're more stable and able to offer more. And then as we go through the project, there's specific things.
Yeah, I think our projects, they all started designing together. And then once the conceptual development takes place, I think depending on everybody's skill set and strength, the direction moves that way as far as who's doing more. So in this case, my participation was more in the beginning of the concept, the design, and then I sort of let Ronnie and Robert move forward with it and sort of had less work in this project, which is sort of the way the project moved. And that's, I think, going to vary based on which one we do.
Because of the environment that Ryan lives in every day, there's a lot of information that kind of comes across his desk, so to speak, in terms of opportunities. And so he's been able to reach out and get the submissions for us. And so he's been instrumental in doing that upfront work. Once we get the commission, then the three of us can be that tripod that Ronnie described. But we've got to get the work first. And so Ryan has been instrumental in doing that. And Ronnie also has, done a great job of rendering conceptual ideas that we put together. But I just wanted to acknowledge that you have to get the job before you do the job. And Ryan has been instrumental in getting that work done.
I think from award of project to our team to final installation was about a year, maybe a little over a year. Including the three of us, we also had a structural engineer, obviously, for the introduction of the piece into the airport. There were plenty of requirements, demonstrated in the construction documents for the airport themselves, but also code requirements. And so, dozens of individuals that we'd have to speak through just to be able to get the coordination. When you do a public art project, it's very much like approaching a building. You need to get the permits, you need to get the inspections. And so dozens of individuals there. When we installed, we did have a team of installers that Robert knew very well. Lucky for us, they all of them had kind of art practices or were involved in the art community in San Antonio. That closeness or tight-knit art community that we have in San Antonio was something that I was introduced to, and was just really amazed by how willing and able people were to kind of help each other in their projects and commissions. And then, of course, all the individuals from the Houston Arts Alliance, Grace, yourself, the team that you have here. It really was, quite a village of people that helped make this piece, and of course the other ones that are going up come together. So the opportunity to connect with individuals that you don't normally interact with or may never have worked with, if not for this piece, you get really close. And so grateful to the team that came together and was able to do that and work around their schedule.